Tighten up, leaders. Welcome to the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership, the show that drills into the foundations of what leadership is all about. I'm your producer and co-host, Hali Gibson.
And I'm your host, Billy Duren.
Join us as we sit down with leaders from across the country to mine for nuggets of wisdom.
All right, everyone, welcome into the meeting room. And today we're going to be talking about leadership because this is the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership podcast. I am the host, Billy Duren, and I want to welcome into the meeting room our producer and co-host, Hali. Hali, welcome back to the meeting room.
Great to be here.
We got a great guest with us today, Hali, association guest. So we've had a lot of people that have come in. They're leaders of organizations, their companies, but Brendan Breen is with us today, and we're going to be talking to someone who's leading an association, and it's incredible how many organizations. He is the president of the Industrial Supply Association, which is a channel association for industrial MROP market. Did I say that, Brendan, correctly? MROP, is that correct?
Got it. MROP.
Okay, so Brendan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me here.
So, Brendan, tell everyone about ISA, and as we talked a little bit about before we got on the air, I know there are a lot of our listeners that will be familiar with STAFTA, so could you differentiate a little bit what ISA is and how it's different from STAFTA, or how it's similar also?
Sure, no problem. So, we are the Industrial Supply Association, and as Billy mentioned, our companies really span the industrial supply channel. And this is right off the bat, there's a big difference between us and STAFTA in that regard, in two ways. One, we are a channel association, meaning that our members are equal stakeholders, our suppliers and our distributors. We're not a distributor-focused organization or a manufacturer or supplier-focused organization. We are a channel association focusing in on the collective value provided by channel partners and providing a platform there. The other big differentiator is our focus in terms of the end markets that we're serving. So whereas STAFTA really does focus a lot more on the construction end market, our focus is mostly in machining and in industrial customers. And so think of things like industrial cutting tools, end mills, abrasives, metalworking fluids, also a lot of safety. So there is some overlap for sure. And certainly we share a lot of the same suppliers, but our distributors really work in different arenas.
So Brandon, when we first met, we were talking about leadership development and what you guys are doing in leadership. And we actually talked about the need for internal leadership development within your member organizations. One of your taglines is leading the channel forward. How is ISA encouraging their member organizations in this area of leadership development?
So, you're getting right to the heart of it, Billy, and I love it. We're jumping right in with both feet. So we think that leading the channel forward means that you need to have your finger on the pulse of where this industry is going. And so we break down our value proposition as an organization into three main categories. And I think we have to lead in all three of these. So the first one, our bread and butter, what we've been known for 120 years, is networking. We need to be a leader in networking and give businesses the opportunity to connect with each other so that they can learn from each other, build plans together, share expertise, and position themselves better for the future, collaborate and join together to provide better value to an evolving end user. So networking is our first pillar, the thing that we expect our members to follow our lead and use our platform in order to engage. The second is in business intelligence. Knowing where you've come from, knowing where you are today and where the industry is today, but most importantly, where it's going. Where are our leading indicators? Where are the major indexes or the end markets that we serve headed? We aim to provide resources to our members by providing them with business analytics tools where they can upload their own data. We provide them with industry reports. We give them insights into the market. We survey our members on a monthly basis. We survey them on an annual basis and provide all that back to our members so that they can make better decisions about the future. Again, leading themselves out into the future. And then the third is we think that probably the most valuable thing that a company can do to position themselves well for the future is have the right talent, is to make sure that they have the right people with the right skill sets in order to do what's necessary and achieve success in the future. And so what we do in workforce development, which is our third pillar, is we focus on those those individuals that are going to be the change makers of the future, not just the young folks, but maybe some of those communities that haven't normally been in leadership roles or are underrepresented in leadership roles. So talking specifically about women, we've surveyed our members, and I think that we're at about 12% of our workforce is female, and 52% of the workforce is female right now overall. And the number one challenge I'm hearing from people is that they don't have the talent they need in order to win in the market. And so all these things add up to us creating an environment that welcomes women into this industry and all industries around us, and creates a home and a safe space for women to feel like they belong to this industry. So we're doing a lot of work with our Women in Industry group. And we're also creating some new programs around emerging leaders, some things that allow our companies to show real investment in their young talent, to show these young people that are looking and are hungry to learn, and they're hungry to belong in an industry, cares about them. We're giving an opportunity for our members to have a turnkey solution for that through their association. So all the three of these things, Billy, networking, workforce development, and business intelligence, this is what every company needs, not just my members, but every company needs to have these things in place in order for them to be ready for the future. And so we're just trying to make it easier, because people got companies to run, and that's not an easy thing to do on your own.
Right. And Haley and I are very excited to have you on our show today, because we were kind of going to go back and forth. We were actually fighting over who's going to ask which question on some of these things that we wanted to talk to you about, because you're in front of so many companies. I mean, the opportunity you have in we talk about leadership. John Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And you guys are having an impact on not just an organization. You guys are having an impact on a field of organization, an entire industry. And oftentimes, Brendan, and you know this, that a lot of times business will focus on the science of their business and not the art of their business. So that art being that leadership, how you develop, how you attract, how you encourage, how you grow leaders internally, and then find out where you need to plug them in externally. So incredible answer to that question on how you do it. So Haley and I are going to kind of go back and forth with questions, because she won the fight on asking most of the questions. Huh?
Yeah, so I like to think about your role in the industry as you walking alongside these companies with what you do, just giving them all of those different resources. One of the things that I notice a lot is a lot of leaders struggle with hitting roadblocks and how to kind of move through those. I like to call the roadblocks kind of these funnel points. So you've got like a bunch of people working on a particular project, and then a lot of the times you hit this funnel point and you can't move through it. So I guess my question is, how can leaders make sure that they are leading their teams through these roadblocks or these funnel points, and instead of moving just past them, moving through them?
Yeah, great question. I think that the best thing a leader can do is let other people try to be leaders. So let the people you work for you that have different perspectives and different ideas wear your hat for a minute and say, well, what would you do? What would you do? Because ultimately, as a leader, we don't have every answer. We don't know what to do in every situation. The accountability might be ours, but what you have working for you are tremendously intelligent people who see your company through a different lens. They see your opportunities through a different lens, your challenges through a different lens, and maybe they can help you innovate through that. It's a lot of pressure on one individual to try to be the sole innovator for a company, to be able to get through those bottlenecks. And, I like to think of my role as somebody that clears the way so that people can innovate and can feel confident to suggest something that is counter to our position, and maybe clear out some of the sacred cows and say, well, what if we just didn't care about that for a minute? Then what could we do? And that's when the magic happens. That's when you come up with a scenario that nobody's thought of yet, because nobody's asking everybody for their input. And I think that we're in a position right now in the labor market where the power dynamic has shifted so dramatically that if you're not asking these people these questions, they might look for another job that does. And it's not just about paying people more. It's about, do they feel like they're contributing? Do they feel like they're heard? Do they feel like they can make a difference? And so I think the number one thing that I can do as a leader, or that anybody can do, is just open up the floodgates to input. Get as many people talking about your problems as you possibly can, because that's where the innovation is going to come from.
It's interesting, Brendan, on the answering the questions and that feeling of being a part of. We talk about vision and saying this is where we're going, and then this is how we're going to get there, and then connecting to, and here's your part in us getting there. But we've also heard from a lot of leaders, and this is one of the questions that we wanted to talk to you about. How important now? I mean, I don't know if this is a generational thing. It might be. You guys are a lot younger than me, but there's a lot of questions around the why we do what we do, why we're doing leadership development, why we're encouraging leadership. Why are we talking about vision and, not just focusing on today, but focusing about this perpetual model that we're trying to build, which is leadership development that becomes part of our system, not just an event, it's a process. So how important in communicating the why have you found with your member organizations?
It's incredibly important. I think that if you're talking specifically about the members that I'm talking to, I think that the older model is to say, we've built something, we think it's really valuable, buy it. And I think what's resonating a whole lot more right now, because I'm talking to people who are owners of their company, who are innovators themselves, or they are senior sales leaders, or whatever they might be. They're really intelligent. And so they might have just as many answers as I do. And so again, it's really about this collaboration. I'm finding a whole lot more success in recruiting new members when I don't have all the answers. When I come to them and say, I've got a passion for success. I've got a passion for vision. I've got a passion for collaboration. I see a lot of opportunity in the association that we serve, in the industry that we serve. But I need smart members around me. I need other people to help me innovate. So I'm plugging people into volunteer opportunities. I'm putting them on task force, or I'm just, touching them every couple of weeks to just say, hey, I have an idea I wanted to run by you. Can you make it better? And I've found by and large that everybody wants to help me make this association better. Even if they're not a member today, it makes them feel a little bit more committed. I put them in a driver's seat. I say, be king for a day. And what would you do with this 120-year-old organization at your fingertips? How could you, if you could leverage or move the industry in a specific direction, what would you do? And it's amazing the answers when you put it that way. If you come about it the other way, people are just going to ask you, well, I'm going to look for a straight line ROI for your membership this year. Tell me exactly what the financial benefit is. And so much of that is intangible. And so it's about making people feel like they belong and that they are in the driver's seat of their opportunity. So I'm finding that that's leading to the biggest success is again, back to the same concept I apply to my own team. Collaborate with those around you and you'll come up with something great.
It's interesting, that collaboration piece. Often we are guilty of developed leaders coming into an emerging leader meeting and say, here's what we need to do, as opposed to what are the first 3 steps you think we should do as our organization, and then see what happens in the room. And I have felt guilty to this for a lot of times. Once I throw my opinion out there, oh, well, good night, Billy's already made a decision. There's really no need for me to contribute. So I just sort of shut down the whole meeting. But I find it interesting, Brendan, in your organization and what you're doing. You're aligning this channel partnership between manufacturers, distributors, and this network for them. You're making this alignment, but you're also, when you're talking about leadership development within an organization that has younger leaders and older leaders, you're also creating channel partners for leadership within the organizations. I mean, think about how we align the emerging leader with the developed leader. I mean, here's a generation gap right here, just here in this studio, but we found a way to come together and take, what the old dog, the old experience that I might bring, but Hali has this fresh, new ideas, this incredible why behind, okay, well, why we're doing this, helping me even develop, okay, maybe I haven't explained the why part, but she allows me to do that. So you guys are merging these almost this generational channel within the organization. I think it's pretty cool.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it is cool. I mean, I think that this younger generation, the Gen Zs and the millennials, they have natural leadership abilities. They think very differently. They think bigger, but maybe we're not unlocking it as much as we should. I think I'm guilty of this too, even though I'm only 41. I still if I'm talking to my team, I can shut down an idea real quick if I make a judgment too quick on it. So it's the consciousness to not block other people's opinions, but to give them the tools so that they can maybe professionalize around how to share them, how to collaborate, how do you share your experience with somebody without shutting it down. All of these things are natural skills that we are or not natural skills. All these things are skills that we as leaders need to develop so that we can unlock the potential of this younger generation, because I feel like they are just gifted. They care about the why way earlier than we ever did. We started caring about the why when we got a little older. Maybe it connected a little bit closer to our compensation, or we had families already established and we knew about our personal why. They are coming out of college needing a why, not just the finance of it, the why. And so it's ingrained in their culture.
We've seen a lot of leaders kind of having to balance both engaging with a younger generation, but also an older generation too. I mean, there's people out there who are leading people who have been in the business 20, 30 years more than they have, or even 20, 30 years less than they have. But how do you balance providing that guidance, whether it's for a younger person or an older person, someone who's just starting in the industry, and giving that direction while also giving the team members the autonomy to find solutions on their own?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really hard one. It really is to be able to speak to all audiences and make them all feel like they are heard, and that their own unique perspective on things matters. And so, some of it is separate them and talk to them. So we do, when we talk to our emerging leaders, we do, offer some courses as part of our professional development platform on managing generational teams or multi-generational teams. I mean, they are in that position. And so understanding best practices for how to do that, I think are important, because you don't want to, just like they don't want to be shut down. Someone with 30 years of experience that is valuable experience doesn't want to be shut down either, just because they've always done the thing that they do that way, or that's the perception. So I think it's sometimes we do have to recognize that these younger folks and emerging leaders and first time people leaders need to develop some actual skills to be able to do this. It's not just the natural ability to want to lead. There's some things that you were taught along the way that maybe helped you navigate these, or you learn the hard way, which is tough. The one thing, the new concept we're trying to really work on is mentorship. We think that all these young leaders need somebody in a safe space to talk to, or coaches. I mean, all of these things are great for people. As I've stepped into this role, I've started using an executive coach, mostly because I need someone to ask a lot of dumb questions to. I need a safe place to go with my thoughts, because when you're in a role like this, you can't ask your subordinates and you can't ask people that pay your salary either. And so how do you have a peer network, or how do you have somebody that you can go and talk to about these things? This helps. And then as far as how we, get these multi-generations to work closer together, I think it starts with leadership at the top of really giving everyone a voice in the room and saying, okay, I'm gonna help smooth this path of this relationship. I'm not just gonna cram a young leader down a senior's throat. I am going to explain the why. I'm going to explain why this is valuable to the company and why the decision was made. And then I'm going to empower that young person and that more senior person to engage in a robust conversation. I think it's taking the time to really making sure that that's not just a quick move. It's a hard move. And if you do it wrong, it can really have negative consequences for your business.
I love the phrase, the first time people leaders. And I'm going to go back to the science and the art. So many times we have seen putting people that are great salespeople into sales management positions, and it becomes a failure just because of the lack of training and the time that we've spent with them, helping them become a better people person. It's the science of selling. They're great, but when it comes to the art of leadership, there is coaching. And I actually, before I was writing down the word coach, when you were talking about mentoring, having someone to come alongside, to walk to that peer, that person that you can pick up the phone and say, hey, I have royally messed this up. Walk me through this, how I could have done this a little bit better, particularly if it's someone outside the organization that you can pick their brain and have some confidentiality around that discussion. So we're with Brendan Breen. He is the president of ISA, the Industrial Supply Association, and he's in the meeting room today on the nuts and bolts of leadership. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and ask Brendan about his own personal journey in leadership. So we'll be right back.
Threaded Fasteners is a 100% employee-owned company whose mission is to create value in and for the people we serve. So, if you're interested in learning more about how we develop a people-centric culture, or if you're interested in a customized fastener solution, send us an email at culture@threadedfasteners.com. That's culture@threadedfasteners.com.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the meeting room. We've got a great conversation going on today with Brendan Breen. He is the president of Industrial Supply Association. And we've been talking about the nature of leadership and how we are merging not only aligning these partners between distributors and manufacturers in the association, but also aligning leaders where we have generational leaders. And I think if you've been listening, Haley, there's been some nuggets dropped in this conversation already. I mean, I'm over here taking notes. I got lost in my whole script because I was writing notes down. Brendan's been dropping some good information for us. So we're going to shift gears just a little bit, Brendan, and talk about your own personal journey. Tell us about someone who influenced you as a leader and someone that you, maybe even still today, someone you look up to, someone you talk with on occasion maybe, but someone who's influenced your leadership journey.
Sure. So, my career has been filled with a lot of different bosses. I think that I've moved, over my association career to a bunch of different associations. And I think that the first person I would mention, because I have two that I think I go back to, is the person that taught me really a lot about business and how to think very strategically, both connecting the dots with strategy and operations, was my predecessor, Ed Gerber. So he held my role before me and then moved on to a new position. But just seeing the way he not only thought about new ideas and initiatives, thought about positioning the association, understanding the landscape in a very quick way, understanding who was in a room and how to influence. Just seeing him work that way taught me so much about leadership and kind of the weight of leadership and accountability of leadership. I think that those were things that, you don't really understand until that weight is on your shoulders. And watching him pretty closely to him as he did it, I got that and I took that into the role I have. So I would say Ed Gerber, who's now the president and CEO at Summit Electric Supply, was certainly someone I would consider a mentor. The second person that I think that I can't not mention about this is my father. So my father was a high school principal. He was actually my high school principal, and that's a hard job. I mean, you are managing teachers and students and parents. I mean, all of these different stakeholders. Keeping that with your head above float with a tremendous work schedule. I mean, my dad was at meetings almost every single night, and a lot of other principals maybe wouldn't do that. And now that I'm a little older and I have meetings of my own, I ask him, I'm like, did you really need to go to all the meetings? He's like, that's where the magic happens. That's where things get decided. And if you're not there, you don't really get to influence it, or you don't really get to own the outcome. And ultimately, the accountability is on you. And so seeing him be, first off, just a great father, but also somebody that was able to be well liked, and someone that was able to be very impactful to the communities he served, was very inspiring for me. And I think a lot, what would my dad do in this situation? And so my father, Barry Breen, has had a tremendous career in education. I didn't want to go into that field myself. Both my parents were educators, but I certainly take a lot of his lessons in leadership to heart. And I think she just modeled that behavior really, really well.
I love it. I love when leaders come on this show and talk about their parents and the impact that their parents have had in their life. I guess it's just there's something about that is encouraging to me, because oftentimes I find myself, even in our company, we're a part of an organization that is created to mentor young men without fathers. And we have seen the impact on fatherlessness. Am I saying this right now? Fatherlessness. When there's an absence of a father, how it impacts particularly those young men in that organization. And it's incredible to hear you talk about that way with your dad with such admiration. I mean, it's really special to me. I'm curious, Brendan, did you ever get sent to the principal's office?
No comment. No, I mean, I was not always the model kid in high school. I think I made him pay for putting me in his school for sure. At the time we probably didn't see eye to eye on everything, but I wasn't a bad kid. I just maybe was a little unlucky. Let's just say that. But yeah, on occasion I had to hold my head a little low around the halls.
I mean, it's actually a double whammy. You get sent to the principal's office, then there's discussion when we get home. My mom would get the note that I had been to the principal's office, so it's a little bit of a double whammy. So I appreciate your transparency there in that. So Brendan, we always ask leaders that are coming on this program on what they're doing about their own personal development. What is something that you're reading or something that you're doing to enhance your own development? I know you talked about working with an executive coach, but what are some things you're reading? What are some things you've recently been involved in? Maybe a leadership nugget that you've picked up on real recently.
Oh man, there's so much. I do read a lot. I think there's certain people I like to follow. I think really outside the box. I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk. I think that he's got a good way of looking at marketing and good way of looking at his people and his passion for what he does. He also doesn't advocate burnout, but he loves what he does. So I think it's about figuring out how to balance those things. I think that outside peer group or leveraging somebody, like you said, outside of your network to get perspective is really, really important. So whether that is a coach like I'm using, which is a phenomenal experience, or a significant other, spouse, something like that, ask them what they would do. I mean, this is somebody you respect enough to spend the rest of your life with them. They know you better than anybody. Sometimes that's the kind of perspective you want to take. I've been reading Jim Collins a lot. My coach really comes from that perspective. And so really what I'm trying to think about most as we're building value for our ISA is long-term sustainability. How can I create programs and initiatives that not only enhance the value today, but create the ability for the association to grow? Because ultimately, I have a 7-person staff right now, and I want to do more. I want to provide more value. And so I need to create more programs that allow me to reinvest back in the organization, hire new people to do new things and do more. And so it's all about creating, if you watch Jim Collins, that flywheel, that thing that, needs to just start moving. And once it starts moving, it's flying, but you have to craft that sustainable model in order to get there. So yeah, I'm a big plug for Good to Great and Built to Last right now.
Both of those books are on my shelf. I will tell you this, and this would be one of those things for you, for your organization, and this is probably one of the challenges, and I think that all organizations face this. Good to Great, the line in Good to Great. If they would have put this on the title of the book, I probably wouldn't even have read the book. Good is the enemy of great. And there are so many organizations that kind of hit that spot, and they say, we're good enough. And maybe not even saying it out loud, but they act like it. They act like this is good enough. But good is the enemy of great. Good will keep us from reaching. But I think that you have a really unique position in that you are in front of so many organizations to remind them, settling is defeat. Settling is never. We're striving for more, continuous improvement. Those kind of things. So Brendan, as we're kind of getting towards the end of our interview today, one thing that we always ask leaders like yourself, we intended to, for this program, we wanted to bring in proven leaders with horsepower, just like you've shown today, what great horsepower you have for your organization. it's so encouraging to me to hear this young person with the enthusiasm and the passion that you have for leadership and for growth. And I hope the member associations appreciate what you're doing for them. But if we had a emerging leader here in the studio, or a business owner, maybe a business owner of one of your association members, and they were talking about or thinking about, how do I get started? How do I move forward in my leadership journey? What would be your words of advice to them today? Here on the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership podcast, we talk about what leadership looks like. We don't want to talk about it conceptually. What does it look like? So how would you encourage them to get started today? This is something you can do today to start your leadership journey.
Make a plan. I think understand what you want next. 100%. I think that, I might drive my parents always say, it seems like you're switching jobs every couple of years. And I think it's always been because I was looking at what I wanted next. And when I got to a place where my current employment wasn't satisfying what I needed, I came up with a plan to pursue what's next. And I'm not advocating for job hopping. And I don't think that that's the message here. The message is know what you want. And it can be something small. If you want a new title, or if you want a raise, or if you want a certain ownership over a kind of project, or if you want new levels of experience, make sure you know what that is, scope out exactly what it is and how you would get there, and then bring it to your boss. And bosses out there, be receptive to that conversation, listen to it fully, and try to make it happen. If it's in your power to make it happen, don't question whether it's valuable or not for that individual. That's really up to them. If you can make it happen without a dramatic impact to your organization, I'm not asking for people to waste money, but if you can make an employee feel like they can achieve their goals through you and you support their goals, they're going to stay at your organization. They're going to stay there, and they're going to continue to do better work. I think that making a plan is the best thing, and it doesn't have to be a 3 or a 5 year plan. It can be a 1 month plan. It's saying, I want to learn how to be a master at ChatGPT in the next 2 months. Okay, so go tell your boss, say, I want to take these 2 courses. It's going to cost me $150. I'm going to need an hour here or an hour there. And I want a little bit of time to work on these projects that relate to that. And I think that I can be able to give back some efficiencies for our company based on that. Come up with a plan like that. Say it with confidence to your boss. And again, bosses out there, try to listen to the whole conversation first. Make a plan. Be intentional about what you want.
So what I heard was for both sides. I heard for the emerging leader to lean in, and also heard for that developed leader, that business owner, have an open mind, have an open door for engagement with your team. Brendan, I can't thank you enough for being on the show today. I was really looking forward to this. Brendan Breen is the president of the Industrial Supply Association, and I just want to thank you for taking some time to being with us on the podcast today.
I'm happy to be here. This was a lot of fun, guys. Thank you for having me.
All right. Haley and I will be back with some closing comments. Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you.
Great conversation with Brendan Breen, who is the president of ISA, Industrial Supply Association. Haley, I think my biggest takeaway from what I was so encouraged with Brendan was young leader. I mean, this guy has some horsepower. Mm-hmm. When he and I first met, we were talking about, an opportunity maybe to come down to Orlando and either do a podcast down there or speak to his team. But I mean, he has got what it takes to be a dynamic leader in front of those member organizations. And I actually think Brendan brings a lot to the table, and I think he's the perfect fit for ISA.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you can tell just the way that he speaks about, one, his team, but then also the teams that they serve. So those two things, working those two things together, I think his points on the first-time people leaders, like he is investing in his team, and him investing in his team with ISA and all of the work that they do. I mean, they're investing in the teams. They're what is it that you call it? It's
Sowing into.
They're sowing into these organizations.
And really that's kind of one of our lead-in questions was, he is responsible and wants to be responsible for introducing leadership development to the association. So great conversation with Brendan Breen. He is the president of ISA, and it was great to have him on the podcast. So we'll look forward to the next episode of Nuts and Bolts of Leadership podcast. And until then, tighten up.
Tighten up. Thank you for joining the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership podcast. brought to you by the employee owners of Threaded Fasteners. If you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe to, rate, and review the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Do you have a leadership story to tell or a question to ask? Email us at podcast@threadedfasteners.com. That's podcast@threadedfasteners.com. This show is made possible by our family at Threaded Fasteners, Inc. Our mission is to create value in and for the people we serve. Interested in learning more about TFI and how we create value in our team, in our communities, and in our customers? Visit threadedfasteners.com. Thank you again for listening. I'm your co-host and producer, Hali Gibson.
And I'm your host, Billy Duren.
This show is edited and produced by Johnny Glenn and our friends at Deep Fried Studios.